Hi, and welcome to Otto & Sons Nursery. My name is Scott Klitich, and my wife and I own the nursery, and I'm here to talk about citrus today. This is our citrus orchard here. We have about 7 acres of Valencia oranges. Something unique to Valencia oranges is that it takes almost 18 months from flower to harvest for the fruit. Valencia oranges flower in spring. You might have smelled the wonderful fragrance this spring. And it produces the fruit, and the fruit are these tiny little things right here. See right in there? That's the fruit that'll be harvested next July, a year from this July. All right? Whereas this tree currently has fruit on it right now. These flowered in spring, March of 2019. So we'll harvest these in July this year. So about 18 months. So for about 2-month period, the tree will have both small fruit and large fruit. And that's kind of unique to Valencia oranges. Washington navels, the mandarins, they all flower in spring, and you harvest later on, usually in the fall or winter of that year. So something unique to the citrus. Anyway, so I want to talk about where to plant citrus in your yard, in your garden. They like full sun. Full sun, they don't put, if you put them in the shade, they just won't do nearly as well. That's the best place for them. You want to protect them from the wind. If you can, put them on next to a building or a fence or some sort of wall or another tree or something like that. That protects them from the wind. What happens with the wind is you get scarring. You kind of see right in here. See this one that was out in the open here? It's got a bunch of scars on the rind here. It's all cosmetic. It's all on the outside, but it makes it not as attractive. So if you can avoid the wind, it's good. Here's one right up here. Look, this was branded just from the wind right there. See, it's scarred right there. But again, the inside will be just fine. You know, it's just a cosmetic concern. So protect it from the wind is good. Protect from frost. Anything below 28 degrees Fahrenheit, the tree's going to get damaged. The actual cells inside the fruit will collapse, and it will you'll get damaged. If there's some ways to control the frost is to you can have it in a pot and move it inside, put it in a greenhouse for the winter. Those kinds of things have been done. I've seen people take and put Christmas lights, the big bulb type, not the LED type of course, but the big bulb type, Christmas lights on the tree, hook it to a thermostat so it turns on when it gets to 30 degrees, and that way that little bulb will create enough heat energy and will keep the tree warm if you're in a marginal area. Otherwise you're going to get some damage if you get below 28 degrees. So that's the way. Look for frost-free areas if possible. There are, you'll hear the words standard, semi-dwarf, and dwarf talked about. That depends on the rootstock that is used with that tree. All citrus is grafted or budded, and they'll be, depending on which rootstock they use, will determine how large the tree will get its eventual height. So a dwarf rootstock is one often called flying dragon that they'll use, and that will reduce the tree down to 20% of what it normally would do. So it's a big constriction, just slowing those nutrients down. It's going up into the tree, so it just reduces that tree from growing, and you'll get a slower growing tree. So it doesn't grow nearly as fast, but you're keeping that stature down. So it's only going to get maybe 5, 6, 7 feet tall at maturity. So it's a nice sized tree for a wine barrel, some sort of a small planter, small pathway area. So the dwarf trees work really well in those areas. The next size up, which is one we mostly grow, is semi-dwarf. Semi-dwarf rootstocks are like the C35, and it creates a smaller tree. It's about 80%, 70-80% of what the tree would get at its natural size. So like a Valencia orange, it's only going to get about 15 to 18 feet at its mature size. Then there are standard rootstocks, which some trees will get 20, 25, 28, 30 feet tall. So if you have a large area, you can go with standard rootstocks. So that's the different rootstocks you can use. There are citrus do grow well in containers. Be sure to use a good potting soil. You want to mix that up and put that in a large container. Larger container, the better. I would not go smaller than a wine barrel size. Larger is better in that case. Planting in the ground, I always think the ground is a better place for citrus because you've got more soil to work with, more soil environments. So watering is not as critical. It's still important, but not as critical as in a pot. A pot, you've got to watch the fertilizer. You've got to watch the moisture all the time. So when in the ground, you've got a bit of a leeway there. You want to dig a generous hole. I always say do a $100 hole for a $10 plant. You know, so you want to Big a generous hole, you want it to have twice as wide as the pot you have, and half again as deep. You're going to mix that extra soil you've put on the side. You're going to blend that with like the Harvest Supreme over here. I like the Harvest Supreme. It's got some chicken manure in it, a bunch of nutrients. It's a good organic product to use. And it's, so you'll blend that about 50-50 with your soil. Of course, you'll backfill in the hole because you've dug it too deep. And then you'll, when you go to plant it, you want to make sure the level of the pot, the current top of the root ball, is equal or higher than your current soil. Actually, higher is better. 1 inch. If you're going to make a mistake, make it too high. Don't make it too low, because what happens if the pot is too low, the soil will fill around it and get moist soil against the trunk, and that could cause a rot and cause the tree to suffer. So make it a little high is good. Even on a little mound is a good thing to do. A lot of the commercial guys out here in the Ventura County area are planting their citrus on rows that are about 18 inches off the ground, big old furrows, and so they're planting them to get that better drainage off the top of the tree. Let's see. After you finish planting it, you're going to make a mound around the outside, probably 18 to 24 inches out from the trunk. You're going to make a mound, maybe 4 or 6 inches tall, and that mound will help hold water into the area so you can initially water it. Fill that up at least 3 times initially, and so the water gets down deep, so you saturate the entire soil in the whole area. All right, and you'll leave that mound there, and that's how you water it for the first year. Is keep filling that hole up. When it comes to irrigation frequency, you want to water it as much as needed, which is hard to say in your climate, in your area, but take and scratch the soil surface, take a look at it. If it's moist, hold off a day or two and give it some more water. But you're probably talking the first year, you'll be watering it about once a week. Okay, and filling up that mount, that basin of water, fill it up at least 3 times each time. In this orchard here, this is a well-established orchard. We've had this, some of these trees are like 80 years old, so they're still producing fruit. We water this orchard once every 3 weeks. But when we water it every 3 weeks, we water it for 48 hours. We have micro sprinklers that put the water on, so there's no runoff. The water just goes down and goes deep. So I encourage you to water your fruit trees deeply. If you've been watering yours every week and now you want to switch to the guy on the computer said do it every 3 weeks, you can't do it right away. You've got to transition your plants from one to the other, and it may take a year or 2 before you can get to that point, because those roots have to grow where the moisture is. Placement, I don't think fruit trees in general, but citrus especially, do not grow well when they're by a lawn, because a lawn area requires watering, say 3 times a week, and you're only watering, the top profile about 2 or 3 inches, whereas the roots on these go down 4 feet, and they're as wider than the tree. So you're going to want you have an incompatibility there between growing a citrus and growing the grass. You're going to water the grass 3 times a week, and this once every 3 weeks. So one of them is going to suffer. Either you're going to have a nice lawn and a poor growing tree, or a good tree and a poor growing lawn. So you might take your sprinklers and rearrange them somehow and carve out areas of your lawn area so you can have your tree be isolated from that sprinkler system, so then you can irrigate it appropriately. So that's one method of taking care of the irrigation. Let's see, what's else on my notes here? Let's talk about fertilizing. There's a number of fertilizers out there. I like the citrus fruit tree one. It's an 842 fertilizer. In this particular bag on a tree this size, full-size tree, you'd use one whole bag of this every 3 months. I think I put on my notes here February, April, and June. Okay, so that's 12 pounds of this fertilizer. This is a 4-pound bag. And you'll use that 3 times a year, and do it it'll be late winter, spring, and early summer. So I think I put on here where are my notes? February, April, and June. The bags all have directions. Certainly you can follow directions on there. It'll tell you how to do it. Smaller trees use less, of course. Larger trees you use more. So that's take a look at that. Also, sometimes you'll see on the leaves, you'll see a yellowing between the veins. That's usually a micronutrient deficiency, usually zinc, manganese, and so you'll want to put or iron. And so there's a foliar fertilizers you can put on there. Sometimes those nutrients are too hard to suck out of the ground for the roots, so you put a foliar fertilizer of those products on the tree, and that'll help alleviate that yellowing. Let's see. Mulching, I think obviously in a commercial grove we can't do it here, but in a home garden, I think it's an excellent way to do. is to have mulch and put a good 2 to 4 inches of mulch on the soil. Having mulch does a number of things. One of them, it holds the moisture in. As it breaks down, it feeds your soil microorganisms, and those are what's releasing nutrients to your tree. It helps keep the soil cooler, and with our hot summers, it's a big difference having a cooler soil. And then also it helps with weeds. Any weed seeds that come flying in might grow in that mulch, but they can't get established too well because it's really easy to pull them out. So it'll reduce your weeds generally, and it will also take any weeds that do come up are easy to pull out at that point. So mulching is very good. Trimming, not a whole lot of trimming to do on the trees, but the main thing you want to do is you're going to trim out dead branches. So sometimes you'll see dead branches, and you'll go through and trim them out. Obviously you use a pruner because that's causing your scraping and scarring of the fruit. So trimming is good. Just removing the dead wood and kind of opening up a little bit. I think it's always good to skirt the trees. Skirting is where you take in the bottom and you just remove about 6 to 12 inches of branches that are hanging down, so they're not touching the ground. So otherwise the citrus will go all the way to the ground. The reason I like that is because if they're all the way to the ground, that's a lot of places where insects can crawl on the ground and crawl up your tree. If you only have one point that touches the ground, the trunk, then that's the only point that insects can go to and go up into the tree. So I like to have a skirting. It also helps with air circulation under the tree. It can be an issue in the wintertime when it's cold. And so so go through and you can do that. And let's see. Sometimes you'll have water sprouts that'll shoot up in the citrus tree. It just goes up and goes straight on up really fast. It doesn't fruit. It's not a sucker generally, but it's just called a water sprout. You want to follow that on down and trim that off where it has attached. Okay. So we're going to talk about pest and pest control now, and plant protection. Citrus can get a lot of pests, and there can be a lot of issues you might see along the way, but most of it is all cosmetic. You know, the rind gets damaged, the leaves get curled. Primarily, it's not going to be a problem for the fruit or the juice on the inside of that rind. But I'm going to run through about a few of them, and just so you'll see them, you know what they are. I'll give you some ideas on how to control them. One thing that you'll see are aphids. Aphids like to suck on the brand new foliage, and then they'll curl the foliage. It'll get kind of twisted up, and then as it's curled, of course, a spider can get in there because that's a nice place for them to hide. Spiders are actually beneficial because they eat aphids and other insects. So that's you'll see those wrong. If you have a lot of them, one way to control it is just by water. Just use water. Here's one of my favorite pest control tools. Here is a nice watering wand. Get underneath and wash, get on top and wash, sides. You want to wash the whole plant. I'll get inside the tree itself and just wash it down. That washes the aphids off, washes any insect eggs, insects that might be there, cleans the foliage. So just washing the plant off is really a good way to control a lot of pest issues. If you have a real bad situation, there are oils you can spray, the neem oil or the Monterey horticultural oil. That all works really well. The only way the oils is don't use them on a hot day. If it's over 80 degrees, I don't recommend that you use any kind of oils because it will actually suffocate the tree and you'll get some leaf burn. We don't want to do that, so that would be used on cooler days. Ants can be a challenge. Earlier I mentioned about skirting the trees where you trim the branches on the sides, so there's only one point of contact with the ground. That way the ants can't go up the side, they can only go up on that trunk. So you have one point of contact, and this ant bait I have here, called this Grant's Ant Kills Ants, Killer Ant Bait. It's a bait that you put around, you shake it around the area. The worker ants will collect that bait, they'll take it back to the nest. The queen will ingest that, and it's like a birth control, and it will slowly kill and reduce that ant nest. It doesn't happen overnight, it takes a couple weeks, but you'll see the ants slowly go away. So it's a really good product for that, for controlling the ants. Leaf miners, so I have a sample of leaf miner here. Let me show you this here. Leaf miners are a little insect that gets inside the foliage itself, and it creates a little mine in there. You can see right in there, a little tunnel kind of between the layers of the leaf, and they'll create a little mine there. And as they make that, of course, it curls the leaf and you get this leaf damage and distortion. Here like this here, see it's all kind of curled up in there. You know, if you can see that in the sunlight there. And leaf miners, again, cosmetic. This new foliage doesn't have it, just this older foliage when it first came out got it. And for leaf miners, you can control it using this organic product we carry called Monterey Garden Insect Spray. This is an organic product that you spray it on the tree, and it won't fix the leaves that are damaged, but it will protect the new leaves as they come out. All right, and it's a topical thing, so you spray it on the new foliage, and the miners won't be able to make a nest in there. Scale insects, sometimes you'll get a scale is actually an insect that crawls around. It will find a location and it settles onto a stem or onto a fruit and kind of makes its home right there. They can be, oftentimes they're red or black, could be bulbous on the stems. I've seen pretty bad infestations of those. Again, the oils work really well. Neem oil, the horticultural oil, those work well for control your scaled pests. Let's see, what else here on our list? Snails. Snails can crawl up the trunk, and they'll come and they'll scar up the fruit. They'll put holes in your foliage. A real nice way to control those would be using the Sluggo product. Sluggo's actually a pasta that they've incorporated an iron fertilizer into it. They discovered that snails and slugs are actually iron is actually toxic to snails and slugs, and that will, when they ingest that, it makes them kind of sleepy, and they kind of wander off someplace to hide, and they'll die at that point. So snails and slugs, really good product. It's good for pets. I mean, pests won't bother it, unlike the previous snail products they used to have. So this is a nice, good, safe product. It's only iron fertilizer and pasta. Gophers, gopher traps. I like the Maccabee trap myself. This is my favorite here, the Maccabee trap. You find a tunnel, you remove the soil, try and work your way down the tunnel. You take this trap, you set it. Once you put it inside the tunnel, I always like to put a little bit of greens behind the trap here, so when this gopher comes along, it hits this trap, it gets stuck or trapped right in there, it suffocates. And then when you come back later, you shake it off of here, and then I like to put it back down inside the tunnel and kind of bury it. As the carcass degrades, it will keep any other gophers away from that tunnel for a while. So, and it's a good way just to get rid of the gopher, just to put it back in the tunnel. That works really well. And let's see, any other pests I'm concerned about right now? Oh, that's about it. Okay, that's it for our pests that I wanted to cover today. If you have any questions, please mark them in the comments below or give us a call. Take care, and thanks for watching.